Hey, all my lovely Libras. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today with your March 2025 monthly horoscope. This horoscope is based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I'm talking about Libra, I'm referring to Libra rising and Libra rising as dictating the landscape of the chart, the first house. If you don't know your rising sign, you'll want to go to any one of the free birth calculators on the internet. You just need your exact time and location of birth to determine that information. When I refer to a day and a time, it's based on the Pacific time zone, so please adjust for your location. That's all the particulars. Now let's talk about March, because March is going to be another pivotal month, but even an octave higher. We start eclipse season. We will have Venus and Mercury retrograding. Please check out my video on that because they are traveling together and they are in conversations with Neptune and the North Node and the eclipses and Saturn. I mean, it's just so much going on. There's a concentration of energy in Pisces and in Aries. Pisces is your sixth house and Aries is your seventh house. Traditionally, the sixth house is what we call the house of servitude, the house of our service to others. It rules our health, it rules our everyday activities and our mental stresses. The seventh house rules our partnerships, traditionally, both marriage partnerships and contractual partnerships through professional endeavors. The seventh house also rules peace and harmony and diplomacy and cooperation. And here we see Aries energy, the sign of the individual and the self. So it's going to be a really interesting month. Neptune will enter your seventh house for the first time in 164, 165 years. So it's just so powerful. The month is another layer. First, we saw Pluto move from Earth into air when it moved from Capricorn into Aquarius. Now we're going to feel Neptune's shift from its domicile of Pisces, water into fire. And then later in the year, we're going to feel Uranus go from the dense energy of Taurus into the air of Gemini. It's going to speed up everything for our human experience. Gemini is another house that rules our everyday activities. Aquarius rules the future. And Aries rules the self. So there's a lot going on. And the Pisces energy that we are experiencing now with the eclipses is bringing up even more of the hidden things that drive our decisions, our consciousness, and offering us an opportunity to integrate that awareness into something that we can use as a tool to connect with the divinity within so that we can literally release and unslave the mind and the monkey mind that the sixth house can represent as well. Let me pull up the chart. Let's start talking specifics here. Okay, so we see the chart is on Libra rising, and I want to tell you that it was 5 minutes ago that I discovered that I can actually now put the chart on the rising sign that I'm talking about. So I'm so excited about that because here you can see this concentration over here. Now, from my perspective as a intuitive astrologer, the sixth house is also representative of the culmination of the first 5 houses of our childhood and our early pubescent period. And we take those skills, we take the confidence, we take the beliefs we have, and we move that into our sixth house of service and work and employment, and it affects our stress. So here we see Saturn has been going through this house for you, and it has been literally commanding you to create a strong relationship with not only your divinity, with your what you believe on a soul level, but also with your creative talents. You know, oftentimes as a Venusian ruled sign and the sign of cooperation and partnership, you could think that your talent has much to do with your partnership. I think this is about bringing your individuality into that partnership. Venus has stationed at 10 degrees of um, Aries. Now, technically, Venus is in detriment in Aries, which means she feels very uncomfortable. She feels very alone. She feels like she has to do it on her own. And yet, here it is 2025. And I think she has a completely different viewpoint at right now. I think she's willing to be passionate about her partnerships, about what she creates for herself in the way that gives her mind a sense of fulfillment and peace. And as she retrogrades from her technical detriment, she's going to move back into her exaltation, where she feels extremely comfortable and welcomed and revered. She's going to have conversations with her best friend Neptune. She's going to have conversations again with Mercury and with the North Node. And even on some level, Saturn comes into play. So this is an important time for our Libras to really be aware of their creative talents, to be willing to work in a way that is not about fulfilling your wallet, but about fulfilling your heart and your soul. Venus will retrograde on the 2nd, but I'm going to go to the 3rd because on the 3rd, we see that Mercury has entered Aries. So here, Venus is retrograding. She is she's going to take a minute before she gets moving backwards. And as she does, Mercury's moving closer and closer to her. They're still far apart, but Mercury on this world axis is starting to have thoughts about I'm sorry to be choppy. The world axis is 0 degrees of Aries. It's where we begin the whole zodiac. It's where the ultimate co-creation starts. So as this being your 7th house, this is going to bring thoughts of your own individuality. What do you want? Do you still want to feel like you are enslaved to a partnership or to some other entity, situation, person that doesn't allow you to feel your individual passions, or you feel that way? There's going to be something that has to do with your self-worth and your confidence and how you speak and think and how you allow for your own awareness to bring evolution in your experiences. And all of this, it feels like, is a continued conversation with the things that you desire on a spiritual level, on a soul level, and the things that you're experiencing on a mundane level. So as Mercury moves into this house and will start to station, it will retrograde on the 15th, and it gets closer and closer to Venus. Thoughts of my skills, my money, my talents, how I want my life to roll, what brings me joy in my partnerships, what brings me a sense of fulfillment. Maybe part of it is Libra not having to be independent, but to be recognized for their independent thinking, their independent skills, their independent way of being within their collaborations. And if for some reason Libra doesn't see that within themselves, then this is something that will come up for review and hopefully integration into a more higher vibration. Now we're going to see on the 11th, Mercury and Venus coming into an exact conjunction at 8 degrees of Aries. Mercury is still moving forward and Venus is moving backwards. This to me becomes even more impassioned to move the story forward in the story of self within partnership, the story of being recognized for my talents, my skills, again, my voice within all my partnerships. So I think this is a super powerful time. And Mercury is also stationing at this point, slowing down its roll to move retrograde just in just a few days at 9 degrees of Aries. We will see the Sun and Saturn in an exact conjunction, but on the 12th. But what I want to say is the Sun and Saturn, as this transit goes on for the next couple of days, is really sort of bringing to me the focus of whether or not I am standing in alignment with my deeper truth. The challenging side of Pisces is it could want to escape. It could want to hide its talents. It could want to hide its belief system. It could want to submerge into another. With this sixth house energy, I think it has something to do with Mercury and the way that you're thinking about this, the way that you're perceiving your self-worth, the way you're perceiving your history. A lot of what's going on in the zodiac is addressing old issues. Uranus is addressing old issues in historic, in personal history and your personal historic dynamic of Taurus. We see that Pisces also represents a sense of history, and we have a little bit of Mars in Cancer ruling your family dynamic growing up. So now on the 13th at 11:54 p.m., we're going to have our first eclipse of 2025 and our first eclipse on the new axis. It's going to be at 23 degrees of Virgo. And this is always where the sun and the moon are in complete opposition, creating the brightest phase of the moon, offering an illumination. Oftentimes people talk about it as an ending, but I think every ending is like one side of a coin. A beginning is just on the back side of it. So here, I think the illumination has a lot to do with the conversation that the sun has been having with Saturn. Saturn ruling where have I restricted myself? Where has my history or my perception of my history? Again, when you put multiple people in a room and they all witness the same thing, they can have many different versions of it. And this is potentially making you aware of a version that no longer serves you. And now Saturn can move that into a reward. This 23 degrees is the Aquarian degree. So there's a sense of moving the story into the future, potentially liberating yourself from an old story, or just having an awareness of it. Just a simple awareness already starts to shift an energy. And I think this is accentuated by the South Node in conjunction with the moon. It's a 4-degree conjunction, which is not tight, but it's tight enough to trigger the old stories, to trigger old habits potentially of self-criticism or feeling invisible or feeling that you have to think a certain way in order to be accepted. The challenge with you having the wheel completely flipped is that your house of work is also a house where you could feel invisible. Your house of how the 12th and the 6th house can be called a house of or an axis of suffering, because there's so much awareness of other people and of the challenges and of the deficit of the human experience. We see a lot of challenging energies in Pisces, including addiction, mental illness. We see in Virgo enslavement to something that doesn't really bring me bounty in its challenging forms. So I think that the moon here is really bringing up an emotional dynamic for you that has been up until now potentially hidden within you and inadvertently enslaved you into a way of thinking that didn't serve a bigger picture. I'm going to do another video on this, but just for specifically for Libra, I think this is how it's going to play out for you. On the 15th, I'm going to go back to 12 p.m. We're going to see Mercury retrograde at 9 degrees of Aries. And these two little planets of Mercury and Venus are going to travel together for most of the retrograde, not far from each other at all. So imagine you're in a house and, you can hear people in the other room chatting. This is what's happening with Neptune and Saturn, and right now the sun as well. The North Node is not technically a planet, but a point, but a karmic point. So this is what Mercury and Venus are hearing as they're entering the house again. They're hearing the chatter. It's like they're coming up the walkway. And their conversation is about what their passions are. They're the passions of self, the passions of creativity, the passions of peace within my own mind. maybe a surrender even, of a situation that cannot be changed, or a situation where there aren't cooperative components. The one challenging part about having a seventh house Aries is it can be a hot house. It could be a house where there's not peace and where there's not diplomacy. On its highest vibration, it can be very brave and heroic. So this would depend upon your personal chart, but this is all being activated during March. So the eclipse also brings in fated events. I didn't bring that up, but meaning this, you have on some level agreed to experience something. And through that experience, you get to make a karmic choice about how you walk through it. It could be, a pleasant experience. It could be a creative opportunity. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be a challenge or a dark moment, but it will have karmic significance for you, and it will reveal itself over the next 6 months. And with this particular one, it will have a Virgo flare. So it'll have something to do with work or the way you think. And it'll be some sort of illumination or some sort of epiphany or like a conclusion or an aha moment. Okay, on the 19th, the Sun and Neptune will be conjunct, and then the Sun will enter Aries on the 20th. We're going to go to the 22nd, where the Sun is conjunct Venus at 2 degrees. And again, Venus is retrograde, Mercury not far behind, and this is still on the world axis. I think this is important because when the planets come together, I should say it this way, when the Sun, traditionally, when the Sun is exact or conjunct a planet, it calls it combust, which means the Sun, outshines it, it eclipses it. Here, I think this is about the review of that, because Venus is retrograde, and Venus as a planet does not have any moons, which is why I think she's so connected to partnership and possessions and things that support her feeling something, because she's stretching for that moon experience in an interesting way. This is scientifically, she doesn't have a moon. She has feelings. But anyway, because here I just think this is something really powerful about how will I co-create a new version of myself, utilizing my skills, utilizing my talents, and then harnessing my mind in that direction. And the harnessing is not ever to be perfect at it, but to understand the ebb and the flow that Neptune represents here, as emotions go back and forth and things are fluid. So it's never about having to stay the course perfect. It's about, will I get back on course when I start to drift off? And that's Saturn doing this long journey through your 6th house. Okay, we will see at 4 degrees, 2 days later, the same conjunction with Mercury and the Sun. And I feel like it's similar conversation, but this time, rather than focusing in on my skills and my voice, meaning my opinion of Venus, we're focused in on my mind and my daily activities and how they affect, or I use those daily activities as a block in some way. We've seen that Neptune is moved to 29 degrees, and within just a couple of days is going to tip its toe onto that world axis again for the first time in 165 years. And I think this is really bringing in a sense of spirituality as we stretch for our individuality to represent the divine here on the planet. So all of this is happening, and the transformation of this is supported by this aspect to Pluto. And of course, here's the moon at this time, but the moon will move very quickly. So we're focused more on Pluto, and Pluto giving you some sort of rebirth and a 2.0, some invention, some genius at, in your 5th house of your own talents and skills, pleasure and entertainment. When I say talents and skills, I think of an actor, I think of a performer, I think of the comic who uses those skills and gets out on the stage and then brings joy not only to others, but to themselves. It's also a house of fun, it's hobbies, it's the conception of children, but it's also with that Aquarian overlay, it's a new version of that for you. Okay. Now, on the 27th, Venus will re-enter her exaltation in retrograde. And I guess re-enter infers that anyway, but I think this is so powerful because she, even in retrograde, she still feels at home. She's like almost like as she moved out of detriment and back with Neptune, she's like, let's talk about those dreams again. Wait, I lost myself a little bit in the trying to get on the road to them, trying to pioneer. And Neptune is talking to Venus saying, be sure to check with God and your angels. Be sure to talk and pray, meditate before you start your endeavors. They'll be much more powerful. And Venus is like, oh, okay, I kind of forgot that stuff. Now we have a new moon solar eclipse in Aries on the 29th. This is going to be at 3:57 a.m. Pacific time. This is our second eclipse of this season. And the new moon is always the darkest phase of the moon, where we're planting something with faith. And I want to emphasize the idea of faith over hope. I keep putting 3:57, but it's 3:58. See what a difference a minute makes in a degree. I want to say this again. I want to emphasize the faith part because faith is something that comes from within you. Hope is something that you expect comes out of you, or out of outside of you. So here we're really planting some seeds for an individual experience, and this is so powerful, and it's so there's so much to this because it's like I think it's the last eclipse we're having on the Aries axis, and we have Mercury retrograde at 0 degrees on that co-creative world axis as it's going to retrograde back into the sign of the soul and the soul's imprint and the soul's history. So I think for my Libras, somehow this eclipse has the opportunity to plant the seeds for you to really release the shackles that have kept you from exploring a higher level of your own creativity, your own personal interests, your own talents and skills. Venus and in Pisces is very musical and lyrical, and can write beautiful poetry and just dream away. And it's Saturn here that really is the anchor, and the anchor in a good way, because Saturn's saying if you do the work beyond what you can see, beyond that hope, this is where faith is endurance. It's demonstrated through endurance. It's demonstrated through tenacity, and things will start to shift for you in a big way because I see your 10th house up here, your career. And when Jupiter moves into your career house, you could really have a change of status when it comes to your self-expression and people showing you gratitude. It doesn't necessarily mean if you want to make money, you could, if you're not at the stage where you want to build money, you could just get recognition and validation for your talents. Okay. And let's go to the 30th. I'm going to go back to 12 p.m. And Neptune has moved on to that 0 degree of Aries. Again, we're going to feel this. Some people will not say, oh, I don't feel a thing. But those of us that are paying attention will notice the subtle signs that Spirit is encouraging us over and over again to come from a soul's perspective when we take action in the physical. Before we think we're going to do something, what is our being energy? What is our belief system before we move forward in that action? Because if we are taking actions based on scarcity, fear, lack, then we get to take a pause and then connect with the bigger picture of ourselves. Thank you for leading me through flow and abundance and through faith. And that is where the real rubber meets the road, and where this beautiful little configuration and Mars is trine up here is so lovely in your 10th house. And Uranus is liberating you here in this 8th house of transformation and rebirth. So this is not going to last long, in the sense of we're going to feel this for a couple of months, then Neptune's going to retrograde back. But what is so significant about this is that Saturn is in the mix. Saturn's going to catch up with Neptune, and then they're going to start to travel together the way Venus and Mercury have. And they're going to retrograde together back into Pisces. And then they're both going to move back into Aries and settle in. And Neptune's going to settle in for about 14, 15 years, and Saturn will be there for about 2. So this is big, big stuff, big stuff. All right, my Libras, that's it for March. That's it, just that little bit. But yeah, a lot of stuff, that awareness. And I want to offer this: don't work for something, right? Working is arduous and tenacious. I'm sorry, torturous sometimes, working for something. Having an awareness, even if it's awareness of something you feel is challenging, is already starting to move the energy in the right direction. And as you continue to focus on what you want to experience versus what you have experienced, you're going to start to feel the shift in the material and the physical. And that's how you're going to be a peaceful warrior for others. So I'm very excited about that. If you are around on Wednesday afternoons between 4 and 6 p.m. Pacific time, I come live on YouTube, and I'll be doing tarot card readings, answering your specific questions. You just put it in the chat, and we'll go in order. And those that donate through Super Chat or Super Thanks will move up to the top of the line. And I'm also live on Sunday mornings. That's where we look at the week ahead's transits in a little bit more detail. And then we do a reading for each rising sign. So I hope you'll join me there. Thank you so much, my Libras. Have a beautiful March, and I will see you in April. Bye-bye.